This week in post Unscripted and Uncut, it's a live edit. Hi everyone, I'm Scott Davenport. Welcome to In Post and thanks for joining me today. Today we're doing a live edit, live in air quotes. I'm not streaming this live. What I am doing is pressing record and processing a photo in my library that I've never worked on before. And so as I go through this, I'll verbalize what's going through my mind and why I'm doing certain things. Might make some mistakes. Might end up with a good photo. Might end up with a so-so photo. We'll see how it goes, but that's kind of how my process works, and you get to see what's really going through my head when I look at a photo. So today's photo is one of the lighthouse from earlier this week. I showed you a visit to the Coquille River Lighthouse in the field, and we're going to just look at one of these photos here. And I've already processed one of these when the sun had come up. So for this live edit, I'm going to do this one here where this was like a pre-dawn, so like blue hour. And first thing I like to do when I look at a photo is just do a quick image assessment. You know, what do I like, what do I not like, and what do I think I want to go do with the photo? So I want to double check that horizon. It looks kind of straight, but kind of tilted. I'm not sure if that's an optical illusion, but I want to make sure that the lighthouse itself looks a little more vertical. That looks like it's tilting a little bit. This foreground rock, especially with all the bird waste on it, is really distracting, so trim that up. And actually, as I think about that, this might actually look really good as a square crop, so that might be the very first thing I do. A little bit of cleanup in the sky, and I just want to rein in highlights on the lighthouse, make the lighthouse pop out a little bit, get some contrast and texture into the rocks. Maybe play with a bit of warmth and kind of simulating a hint of sunlight on the scene, even though the sun hadn't breached the horizon to throw golden light on the lighthouse just yet. So let's get in with the crop first. So R key for the crop. I'm going to switch over to that square idea and see how that starts to look. Double L key so I can just look at it with no other distractions. This lower right corner is feeling kind of heavy. Let's do something. Yeah, I want to lose the top of the lighthouse there. Maybe around there. I kind of like that. Let's start with that. Okay, back to our controls there. That double L key, I've got a different video on that one. Let's take care of the distracting elements. You can see the noise and grain here. This was certainly taken well before the sun had come up. ISO 6400 when I took this shot. This might have been one of the test framings that I was doing to make sure I had my composition dialed in pretty well before I took the actual photo. So now that I'm seeing this closer up, there is a significant amount of noise out there. I'm going to get rid of this little thing here too. I'll click on it once, H key, and switch that to a clone so we can get a better blend on that and maybe choose a little less of an obvious cloning job there, so we don't have that repeating pattern of this thing right there. That's really nice. Let's zoom back out. Anything else in the sky that looks strange, I'll turn on visualize spots. That all looks pretty clean other than the noise. So let's deal with the noise. That's something I hadn't realized was going to be as pronounced in this photo. I'm now seeing this little sign on the door which basically says they're closed for the season. Maybe I'll revisit that, maybe not, depending on how well the rest of the photo comes out, and clean that up and make it a little more of a no human presence type of photo here. Where do I want to go? Detail. Let's get some better idea on the noise, and this will be a good representative area of noise. We can see the building, we can see the sky. Let's start with boosting up luminance, noise reduction. That's already better. That's cleaner. I don't want to go too far. If I go too far, I'm going to start really losing detail. Like that's getting super soft, right? This is like almost soft and creamy, and that's just too much. Pull that back some. Maybe right around there. I'm not going to eliminate noise in this photo. That's just not how it's going to work. There's noise here, and it's going to be there. And if anything, I could double down on it and maybe pump it up and make it look like a film grain or something like that. But for now, I'm going to stick with this amount of noise reduction. Anything else to do in detail while I'm sitting here? Not really. All right. Zooming back out, let's check a couple other things. The lens corrections are on. Let's do transform and try and straighten out our lighthouse. I'll just try out auto. I did a tiny bit of adjustment. Let's do a guided one. And we'll make sure that this edge is straight. Click and drag down to about there. And let's have the same thing on the opposite side so that both of the left and right edges of the lighthouse are considered straight. And let's see what the tool does with that. That's better. Let me do before and after on that. Put the tool away, before and after. I want to revisit the crop though, because we're losing some sky up there now. So we'll just bring the lighthouse back into the scene. Call that pretty okay. All right, moving on. Let's get back into basics. So a little underexposed. White balance we'll play with. I'll treat that more of as a kind of a artistic expression. Oh, you know, I forgot to check the horizon line too. Let me do that really quickly on the angle here. Let's get that double checked. Very slight adjustment. We'll take that. Call it good. Okay, so color treatments. Let's flip through some of these choices here. And you know, something I would really like Adobe to start doing is giving me hover. I've gotten used to that in On One. I hover over something and it just gives me the change right away. Vivid. Oh, actually, vivid's nice for the reds, but it's a little bit too deep elsewhere. Landscape's a little flat. Standard's going to be even flatter than color. I'm going to try the flat landscape and just start with a punch and contrast, which will get us closer to vivid. Because I'm really liking how the reds are coming out on the lighthouse. It's a nice offset and play to the blues in the sky. Let's do a quick before and after that. Backslash before, after. Yeah, that's better. Okay. What needs to happen next? The scrub down on the bottom is still bugging me. I know my mind is jumping around here. I'm still thinking about basic adjustments, and I'm also looking at the composition, saying, you know, what do I like? What do I want to downplay? What do I want to amp up? I don't want to have much of the attention paid here. I wouldn't mind having the rocks pop up some more, and certainly this is the star of the show. What else we got here? We're underexposed. Let's look at exposure. Start creeping that up some. Maybe a half stop, because that seems really bright on the lighthouse. Pull the highlights back. And yeah, you know, this is probably just going to remain underexposed. I'm not going to, if I push this too far, I can push whites, and I could get a white point, but you know, that's just not going to look right. And then I'll have to basically yank down on the highlights. That's just not feeling good to me. I'm going to stick with it being a little more underexposed. Maybe split the difference on the whites. Something like that. Black point, let's make sure we've got a deep black point. I'm holding down the Option key or Alt on a Mac. Oh, sorry, on a Windows machine. Okay, got some black points down in there. Okay, what else? Let's try general clarity for the scene overall. And I'll be gentle with this, as I will add something more specific into the rocks, probably with a paintbrush. That's all that's going to be needed there. All right. Okay, another thought, and this will be a good test of the color range masks in Lightroom. I want to get more depth in the scene, and one thing we can do is have cooler colors be a little more amplified, because cooler colors will retreat in a scene and move away. So if we can get the sky to be a cooler tone of blue, that will, you know, psychologically move away from our eye and therefore bring the lighthouse forward more. So let's try that with graduated filter. We'll get temperature, and we'll just start with a cooler temperature. That'll be a starting point. That's fine. Pull this gradient down here. All right, fine, wonderful. The magic is going to be in the range mask. We'll try color. I'm going to choose the tool. I'm going to use the Shift key and just click on a few points out in the sky. Put that tool away and see how it did with the mask. And press the O key. It did very well. So we've got this cooler tone happening to the sky, and the lighthouse is not being affected. Now we can even play with exposure. Nice. All right, and we're going to brush in a little bit of this into this ocean. This is actually a river down here, just to smooth that out. All right, cool. All right, let's shift the tension to the rocks now. So let's go to the brush tool and let's get some clarity here. So actually I have a little preset crisp, and that's going to bump contrast, clarity, and a slight amount of dehaze. That all kind of adds up to getting some pretty good detail punch. I'm just going to brush through these rocks here and this stuff here as well. And as I'm doing this, I'm noticing a slight green cast to the rocks here, and that's reminding me that I forgot to check white balance. So we're going to finish that little brush stroke there. Let's make sure I covered all of the main areas. O key for the mask overlay. Make sure I've got that part there. This stuff at the edge. And I don't want to add any contrast pop to this scrub over on the right corner there, because I don't want to play that up. I want that to be kind of ignored and downplayed. Don't want to spend time looking at it. And I'm just waiting for Lightroom to catch up with me a little bit with the controls. There we go. Brush that in there. Okay, cool. Turn that off. Get back over to the basic panel to check that white balance. Let's see. Auto, what are you doing for me here? Wow, it's terrible. Okay, we're not going to take that. It's not really cloudy, but it's dusky and it's dim, so that may be a little more palatable. That's better. Let me compare that to as shot. Okay, yeah, as shot's definitely very, very blue. All right, so 4550, and then cloudy, 6500. What about shade? Let's try shade. Shade's gonna be way too warm. Come on, Lightroom, catch up. All right, yeah, shade's way too warm. Let's pull that back, but somewhere in like, not even a little lower than daylight. Daylight would be about 5500. We'll come in underneath that because it is still dusky, it is still blue. But I want to get rid of that greenish cast, and having the tint shifted a little bit helps as well. Let's see, that feels pretty all right. Let's do a quick experiment in the curve. Open up green, and let's see, sample points. What I'm doing is I'm hovering over various parts of the rocks and just seeing where that matches in the histogram. And it's all on that lower bump in the curve here. So as I move around, you watch the curve, you'll see the point jump around on the curve. I go up in the sky, it's going to get up in the mid-tones, and then this will be the bright areas. So all of the rock stuff was right around here. So I can nudge that down just a little bit, take that back up to about there. So we're just mainly affecting the rocks. And so before that curve adjustment, and then after, so removing the green is adding more magentas. I gotta be really subtle on that curve. So I don't want to make the rocks start to look purple. That's not going to look good either. Okay, I think I've spent enough time playing with rocks. Let's get back to shaping this photo overall. Jumping back into the graduated filter, dragging up something from the corner, and this is to burn it because I want to downplay that. Lower the exposure on that. Okay, good. And you notice all that crispness went away from my previous settings. That was the default for the graduated filter. That's good. Now finally for the lighthouse itself, we'll use a radial shape. Circle in on this. I want to do a couple of things here. I want to pop up the clarity on it, maybe the contrast as well. Let's play contrast, clarity. I want to invert, so I'm affecting what's inside of the radial. All right, let's play highlights here. Tug those down a little bit. Better. I'm going to push clarity a little bit more. I don't mind that lighthouse really starting to pop. Let's see. Last thing will be to clean up the mask itself. Let me hit the O key. We'll turn on that overlay, see what this is affecting. Okay, pretty good. A little bit on the rocks, I'm not going to mind. I don't want it up in the sky. Brush and the erase auto mask. Full flow, because we really don't care about anything up in that sky area. And we'll just brush through that. And man, Lightroom is chugging. Fair enough. I've got about 4 or 5 other applications open right now, which maybe next time I'll have to close some of those down when I start up the recording. That might help me out with the speed here. But, we are where we are. Let's go ahead and clean that part up there. I got to catch up. I already did the brush stroke there. Let me let Lightroom catch up a bit. Okay, I got the right side, and I got the left side. Okay, that's good. Turn off the overlay. Close the tool. And maybe the last but not least little nudge will be a nice tiny vignette. Just a tiny bit. And let's check a before and after on this. So here's before. And here's after. That's certainly a pretty dramatic improvement. Is it the best lighthouse photo ever? Nah, can't say that it is. So I'm not really interested in going further with this anymore, to take care of that little sign that was on the door. I had thoughts as I was going through that. I didn't even verbalize, what would it look like if we added, kind of a glow or things like that. Not going to do that. Going to take this as is. It was a nice I was here photo. And I'm going to call it good. For the tip of the week, I think it's the curves control and using that little double-headed arrow to kind of scan over the photo and get an idea of where the tones are that you want to change in relationship to everything else in the scene. And that'll help you target a curve adjustment. So we did that with the green channel on this one to just take a little bit of that greenish color cast off of the shadowy rock areas, but put a couple of extra points on that curve to keep everything else in line. So we weren't taking green away and adding magenta to the scene as a whole, just targeting it to the shadow areas. And that will do it for this week's In Post. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, let me know somehow. Comment on the video below. Questions about photography, always welcome. You can leave them in the comments. You can send them to me privately through my website. Either way, I tend to turn an answer around, usually in a day or two. So, feel free to ask your questions and, or share some thoughts about, what about this? Or did you try that? Or did you think about this? I'm always eager to hear what is on your mind photographically. And until next time, my name is Scott Davenport, and happy shooting.